still, per se, following something or somebody. All right? Now, when you're reading the books and stuff, studying, when you're doing your research, you're gathering your information, that's to create the guideline and the roadmap for you to create your path, not to follow identically what's in books to a T. Because then what happens is, when you get to the esoterical essence of it, the individual that created those rituals in those books has him or her has stamped their own personal energy. You're actually tapping into their energy. So you can use the information as a guide, just as you would a roadmap to get you somewhere. But you should get yourself to the point. Yeah, that thing is blowing like right on me. Is there any way we can just push that up? It's like, I mean,
yeah, you want to.
If we could just push
Which one's going? That one or
I don't know. I think it might be that one, maybe. Maybe it's that one then. Yeah.
And you don't want to move forward?
I can move forward, yeah.
Or you can, if you can reach the control to do it in a different direction.
Yeah, exactly. That's the one that thing's hit me right on the head.
Yeah, I think it's that one.
You have like a broomstick or something?
Oh, are you best in the corner?
Let me just see if I can move up, but I don't know if that plug's gonna go up.
No, if you move.
That plug is kind of.
If you move this way.
Okay, let's do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you move that way.
Yeah, maybe that'll get me out of that. Yeah, it's better. That's better. All right, so yeah, the issue is again, there's a lot of groups, a lot of organizations. When as we've talked about in the weeks, when you look at the conscious community, everybody's saying, using this terminology, that they're God. I'm a god, I'm a goddess. But yet when you really ask them to break that down, what does that mean? Subconsciously, there's still a lot of religious overtones in it. So what we have to start doing is, when somebody says I'm God, let's have them define what that is. It's more deeper than the original Asiatic black man. Everybody's on this I'm first shit. Okay, the problem with that is, at the end of the day, after the argument is over, where's it getting us to? Because if we can't apply, other than the argument, first, original, this, that, we have to start producing works that validate that, rather than just talking about it. And that's the problem. So there's more so talking going on than there is any production of works, because a lot of it, as you see now, what just went down with these Orlando shootings, and we just did a show on that. That was a whole ritual that took place in front of you, if you paid attention. A lot of people are not really understanding what's going on. We did the show based on the principles, homosexuality is a touchy topic in spiritual consciousness. Nobody wants to touch it. Now, regardless, people will attack that from a perspective with religious overtones and religious overviews. It's personal. Now, your sexual preference has nothing to do with your spirituality, regardless of your personal opinion on it. If you go back to some ancient African cultures, you'll find out a lot of them were considered guardians of the gateway. And that was a ritual that actually took place. They're using the Islam, they're hiding behind terrorism, because what they're trying to bring in is that new world order. They're trying to bring in that martial law. They're trying to create a society where you can just say, look, we can't govern ourselves. We need to be policed 24/7. And all of this stuff is being staged right in front of your eyes, intentionally, to create that panic, to create that fear. But the thing we need to question, if you've looked at the whole scenario, how that thing went down, there's a lot of sketchiness to it. Okay, this dude obviously was a homosexual that got rejected, and he was retaliating. There was some personal agenda into this, because obviously the dude was on 6 different gay sites, had his profile on there. He was hanging out in gay clubs. He actually was also well known in the transgender community. So this was a dude that was wrestling with his sexuality, and then his radical Islam. Most people that have phobias, exactly. Most people that have phobias, they lash out against something because deep within themselves, they're wrestling with something that they fear. And you'll find most people that are homophobic are the same way. It's always the ones that are so anti-homo and they got to stress it all the time. Deep down inside, they're dealing with demons that they have not been able to address. So the way to address it is to lash out against it in an aggressive way. Now, my personal stance on it I don't agree with it, but it's not my place to judge. See, we don't want to take a stance. We're afraid to say stuff like that. Everybody wants to be liberal. I'm not in agreement with that lifestyle, but at the same token, I know when you get back to the genetics of it and the spirituality of it, especially when you deal with the 7 principles of Tahuti and the doctrine of vibration and gender, it doesn't make a difference. Now, it's hard for people to grasp that and swallow that because people still have a religious mindset when it comes to sexuality. And even when you talk about androgyny, because remember, the first beings on the planet were androgynous. They weren't male or female. They had dual sex organs. And this is recorded in ancient Egypt. And people always talk about Egypt, but they only get into the aspects of Egypt that they're comfortable with. And even when you read the Coming Forth by Day, that's a magical book. That deals with a lot of spiritual magic and black magic. People look at that as a religious text because they don't understand it. You understand? So when you get into the core and the essence of it, we have to get back to these principles and actually put a lot of this into practice and into fruition, and not just read about it anymore. Because the only way we're going to bring about change, everybody wants to know when's change going to come. And I keep telling people, you can do all the protesting, the marching, you can get as emotional as you want. You can complain, bitch, and moan, it ain't going to do nothing. All you're going to be is that complaining person that's always complaining about how you've been done wrong, blah, blah, blah. We all know the problem. But as soon as you ask somebody, what solutions or methods can we take to solutions, everybody gets quiet. Because that's been a system mentally they've imposed upon us in our minds to get this complaining mentality amongst blacks and Latinos, where instead of us doing things, we want to do stuff that become reactionary. We want to fall right into their hands. We want to, again, protesting and marching. They want you to do that stuff. Because they know, again, at the end of the day, have your little say. And then what happens when a lot of this stuff goes down? Then after it fades in time, everybody just goes back to doing what they were doing. So somebody is enforcing a certain mentality or way of thinking on you. Now, I told you some of the solutions. If we got together and we put some of our spiritual practices, our rituals, if we practice mantra magic where we access the tones, vibration, and frequencies to bring some of this spiritual energy down, this is what's going to bring about change. And nobody could do anything to stop it. That's what's going to bring about true change. See, when they see you gather and they see you start dealing in that aspect, that's going to be something that's going to get their attention. But when you go to D.C. and have a march, they laugh at shit like that. Like, yeah, let them have their day. Meanwhile, while that's going on, they got National Guard, they got the police just ready and waiting in case there's a riot. So we got to start again. Remember, to attack every problem, its root is spiritually before you can attack it physically. The problem is we're trying to attack everything physically, and the minds are not right. Because the problem, the other sickness we got, everybody amongst us is everything but what they should be. Everybody's a Muslim, I'm a Christian, I'm a Jew, I'm a Buddhist, I'm this, I'm that, I'm an Egyptologist, I'm spiritually conscious. We don't have no identity. Everybody wants to identify with everything but what they should be. First of all, titles limit you. When you put a title on yourself, that's perfect because then people can put you inside of a box and they can kind of categorize you. You understand? When you're somebody that deals with spirituality, consciousness, a mystic, whatever term, there's no box you can put that in. But when you exclusively, like most people in the conscious community who say they're conscious, only really identify with Egypt, as if Egypt is the only part of Africa. They don't deal with the primitive part of Africa that predates Egypt. Egypt is not the first. You got to go back to Nubia now. Nubia is the mother of Egypt. Without Nubia, there is no Egypt. And when you go back to the ancient Nubians, you find out these were the Neolithics that occupied the Nile region. These were the individuals that we call pygmies and Watusis. This is who migrated to what we know as the ancient Egyptians. We identify with Egypt because it's the first great established civilization. But we can't put a time frame on that stuff. So we get caught up in a debate about who was first, who was original. Okay? So now creating your own spiritual path. As you know, black magic, okay? Lesser black magic, greater black magic. To remove the spookism from that. Most people have the definition when they hear that term that deals with devil worship, satanic worship. That's all European garbage. That's all definitions that Google gives you. And when you talk about what they call modern day Satanism, that's something that's only come along in the last couple hundred years. That's actually watered down aspects. You got some more people walking up, just so you know. That's some watered down aspects of what our true science was. Now the only way, greater black magic is when you work with your subjective realm. Let's establish that. You create your realities on your subjective realm. Your objective realm is, just as it sounds, the word object, objective, it's physical. Now the key in, as we talked a little bit about on the last class, is balancing your objective realm with your subjective realm. That's the challenge. Now usually what happens in that, oh, how you doing? Usually what happens in that process, that's where the imbalancement comes in. That one book that I pointed out to you there, Psychology and the Four Elements, that book right there, how you doing? That individual gets into that balancement, and that's why I told you to check that out, because what tends to happen is what's a reality to us on our subjective realm is not a reality to everybody else. You understand? The key to understanding that, this is usually what creates that, where we say somebody is spaced out or spooky, or they become a space cadet, or there's that imbalance between the spiritual and the physical. You'll find out most people that you run into are either the ones that are very, very spiritual, they're not grounded in reality. They're not grounded in their root chakra. They usually struggle with money. They usually struggle with finances, because they usually use the spiritual realm as an escape from dealing with everyday reality. So they become so spiritual and mystic, and you can't tell them shit because they know everything. That's usually because subconsciously they're running from dealing with their objective realm. That's the problem. That's what that deals with. Then you have the flip side to that. Then you have people that are so grounded in the objective realm that they're so physical and materialistic that they can't really grasp towards certain levels of spirituality. They can only go so far because they're vibrating on a frequency where they're just dealing with the materialistic aspect of things. So that's what that deals with. The four elements kind of shows you how you got to balance that out. A true master, male or female, seeks that path in between. You have to get that path in between, meaning there's a time, to meditate. There's a time to study. There's a time to practice your rituals and your magic. There's a time to work, make money, take care of your family. You got to know when that time is to allot that time. The thing is, if you sat in your house all day and meditated and want to be spiritual, no bills would get paid, shit wouldn't get done, and you become this imbalanced individual that's unsuccessful. So the key, what that is that basically deals with, close that door. What that basically deals with is how does one balance, creating your own path is dealing with how one balances the objective and the subjective realm. Just so we're clear, the subjective realm is when you vibrate out a person, place, or thing, three dimension. Once you're able to start vibrating on a frequency beyond the mental plane, outside of fourth density, whether it's via astral traveling, through meditation, and you're not confined to three density, you're now tapping into your subjective realm. All your realities, your fears, your joys, your happiness, your sorrows, are all accessible on that subjective realm. That's where you create your realities. The problem is, per se, for an example, is you have a lot of people over the years that might have a personal spiritual experience, and they could have had it. I'm not saying they didn't, but without you confirming that experience, you can't agree with that without confirming or experiencing it, because this is how we start religions on the objective realm. So that person might have had that personal experience, and I'm sure they did, but that's a reality on their subjective realm. It's not a reality on yours until you raise yourself up to that reality. So that's where we create our realities. Now, to bring it into the objective or the physical realm, how do we make that a reality to ourselves, number one, and two, how do we balance the both out without becoming disconnected or imbalanced? Now, you have to also be careful, because you're going to find some people that get into high levels of spirituality, they open themselves up to walk-ins and different types of energies and spirits. And then, unfortunately, the negative side of it, some people can really go off the deep end if they don't really know what they're doing. Working greater black magic, which is dealing with the subjective realm, is summoning various different, what we might call them spirits or deities, but they're just archetype energies. The other thing we have to get out of is this concept of worshiping things, right? Even with Egypt, most people have taken Egypt and made it a new modern day form of their new religion. They've left Christianity, they've left Islam, they've left Judaism, but now what they're doing is they claim to be into Egyptology or consciousness, but they've